After a full season sitting out last year with the Steelers, Le'Veon Bell is ready to go with the Jets, Jets, and he does not want his new team to hold back on getting him the ball.
I carry 50 if you ask me to. I'm ready. When I say don't hold back, I mean literally that. Like, I don't want to go out here and try to sprinkle me in or things like that. Like, I'm ready to play football. And I've been waiting a long time, for this moment.
Bell also had some comments about his former Steelers team from USA Today Sports, saying in part, I'm thinking I'm going to show everybody. I'm going to show people that, look, Pittsburgh had something special, and they let it go. That's what I'm going to go out there and do. In addition, obviously, as you know, Pittsburgh also let AB go this offseason. Stephen A., this is your team. Let me ask you this. You think the Steelers are going to be better off with those special talents on the team, Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown?
Well, listen, I'm not about to act like they didn't suffer by losing somebody like Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, because the brothers are special. They're elite at what they do. But I can make the argument that I think the Steelers are going to be a better team, because I think they're more of a team now, as opposed to a collection of individuals. And that's where I come to support the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that when you look at their willingness to play together and the camaraderie, the chemistry, and the absence of dysfunction that presently appears to exist in their locker room, I think one can make an argument that in the sport of football, unlike most other sports, that can end up being a plus, addition by subtraction. And I think that's the argument that they're making, and I think that's an argument that they will validate. And so when I look at it from that perspective, again, we can't blame Le'Veon Bell for taking the position that he took, because it was strictly business. And all he did was hold out because he didn't want to be franchised again. He wanted a long-term deal, and he knew the best chance of getting that was to hold out. In the case of Antonio Brown, it's entirely different, because clearly he was willing to be a distraction in order to make his point. And some of the things that was transpiring in that locker room, we're now learning more and more and more with things that may have been instigated by him in an effort, obviously for business purposes, to get himself out. But he doesn't seem to know how to stop. So if he's that way now in Oakland with an additional $30 million in his pocket, imagine how he was in Pittsburgh last year, wondering whether or not he was going to get out of his contract in Pittsburgh so he could end someplace else and get that additional $30 million. One can only imagine how much of a problem he may have been at that particular moment in time. So that's addition by subtraction, and that's why I say it's entirely possible that the Steelers could end up being better off, particularly also when you consider what Antonio Brown has said about Big Ben and how Le'Veon Bell has piggybacked off of that to validate what Antonio Brown has said about Big Ben. One can only imagine how that locker room was last year.
Will they be better off without Bell and Brown this year? I think the answer is no.
Yes.
Look, they won 9 games last year, and 9-6-1, like really a 6-loss team, a lot of times can make the playoffs. That wasn't the case for the Steelers last year, but they're pretty good last year. And Connor showed that he can be an every down back, a solid every down back, and maybe even a good one. By the way, that's a very high standard to be an every down back in the first place. And Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, is a legit number 1 receiver, if not a good one. Again, maybe not elite, but that's a big deal to be a legit number 1 receiver. And then by that standard, a good one is really good. So they're set. They have real players. And, Stephen A., I saw my New York Football Giants get rid of Tiki Barber and Jeremy Shockey, 2 excellent skills position players, and get better. They won a couple Super Bowls without him. So I understand chemistry is a thing, and you can have a solid football team without the glitz and glamour of the big-name guys sometimes. Le'Veon Bell is an exceptional player. He's been, if you consider a generation in running back terms, it'd be, let's say, 5 years. Le'Veon Bell was the best running back of his generation. And still, why wouldn't he have plenty of football ahead of him, right? Like, he still looked like he was in his prime, not just by age, but by the kind of seasons or the kind of games he was having when he's on the field. One of the most well-rounded backs I've ever seen, probably in the history of football, one of the most well-rounded backs. And you didn't have him last year. And you know where he gives you a premium over Connor? I mean, he's better than Connor in a lot of respects, and that's saying a lot, because Connor's good. Ball security. I mean, listen, Ben Roethlisberger had to punch in a touchdown that Connor coughed up in order to save the game. Like, I believe if they had Le'Veon Bell all year last year, they make the playoffs. Now, they didn't have him. So to say, are they going to be better off this year? It's not just a comparison with last year where they didn't have Le'Veon Bell. but it's would they be better off or will they be better off than if they still had Le'Veon Bell? And I have to think that even with the distractions Antonio Brown caused, if you gave me Le'Veon Bell and even Antonio Brown with all the baggage on this Steelers team, they'd be better. They're better off with than without. I don't know. Like, they have a lot to prove about Roethlisberger's leadership and the chemistry of the team and all that stuff and wanting volunteers, not hostages. I'm not saying chemistry is not a thing. It's a big thing. I get it, especially in the NFL, especially in the game of football. But to lose two premium all-time talents like that in their prime, boy, there's a lot to prove for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I can't say they're better off without them.
Well, listen, it's hard to say that because we're looking at individual talent, and we have to recognize the greatness of Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. Understand that the word greatness is apropos here. They are great. They are elite at what they do. Last time we saw Le'Veon Bell, he was absolutely phenomenal, and he didn't play football last year, so the body is fresh or whatever. If I'm the Jets, I ignore what the hell he just said because he did tend to get some injuries when he played before. So I want to safeguard it. If I invested $52.5 million with him, I'm not going to front load him with a whole bunch of work early in the season. Hell with that. I'm trying to make a run for a wild card spot because I know there's no way in hell I'm winning the AFC East. So with that in mind, I'm not going to sit up there and listen to him say, give me the ball 50 times. Le'Veon Bell could go someplace with that, but I will tell you that he is great. He is phenomenal. So is Antonio Brown. But what can't be argued by you, Max, or Molly, for that matter, is that we religiously sat here on national television on many, many days talking about football in a different fashion than we do the other sports, even though team chemistry, cohesiveness, locker room togetherness, all of those things matter. It exponentially rises when it comes to football because you need each other. You got 11 men on offense, 11 men on defense, 11 men on special teams. You really, really have to come together. And if somebody is deemed a distraction or, dare I say, cancerous to the overall agenda of the program or the franchise, it can have or it can provoke significant collateral damage. And that's what I'm making the argument that apparently was going on with Pittsburgh last year that I don't believe will go on now.
You add those two guys to a team. We're talking about my sleeper, what's our bold prediction for the season? I think the Panthers are going to make a playoff run, right? There are teams like that. Just imagine adding Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell to, for example, Carolina. Right? So the point is Pittsburgh has a lot of things in place. When you take two all-time great talents in their prime off that team, think of how much the chemistry must improve in order to offset that.
I would say this to you. We look at the New England Patriots, you look at a few other teams, they haven't had that talent. There's no Super Bowl championship, not even an AFC championship on Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell's resume.
Yeah. Listen, Ben to AB, the only duo with more touchdowns that hooked up. Yeah. Gronk and Tom Brady. 74 touchdowns between those two. They'll certainly miss him, but they got juju. All right, guys, still to come on First Take. The 100th NFL season kicks off tonight. Tonight's the night. So who are these guys picking to win it all? I love this. Super Bowl picks. Okay.
Yeah.